Gerald Finley, welcome to Cultural Attaché.
I'm very glad to be here.
You must be because you're having quite the 2025. I mean, you're finishing a run in John Adams' Antony and Cleopatra at the Metropolitan Opera with Julia Bullock. Earlier this year, you were in Festen at the Royal Opera House, which received the Olivier Award for Best New Opera Production. And because you just can't sit still, you'll be performing at the Broad Stage in Santa Monica on June 11th. I would say
Yeah.
that's a pretty impressive first half of 2025.
I count my blessings in that regard. And yeah, I mean, all these projects are fantastic in their own way. Particularly singing, the newer operas that are coming on, um, and later in the year, I'm going back to the classics. So it's quite a nicely balanced year for that.
Going back to the classics and at a small little venue people might have heard of called La Scala.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know it's my debut there? So I'm really excited by that.
Is it as exciting for you as I would imagine it would be?
Oh, look, the most iconic opera house in the world, perhaps, yeah, I mean, I never thought in some ways that it would, that it would come at this part of my career. I thought that maybe, that my repertoire is been so varied, shall we say, that there was, you know, perhaps not the obvious choice of how and when I would go, but I'm thrilled, of course.
Good. Well, let me start by asking about something George Bernard Shaw famously said. He said, "Opera is when a tenor and a soprano want to make love, but are prevented from doing so by a baritone." What then is the function of a bass baritone in making relationships work or not?
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, we go from, being the father that interrupts the daughter's ambition to the villain, say of Scarpia and Tosca, to try and have the soprano come what may. Um, and then you can be paternalistic and well, shall we say, forego the pleasures of that in a role like Hans Sachs in Meistersinger. So we have a really wide, uh, a wide, shall we say, involvement in all of these stories. And um, I mean, I must say that one of the glories of being a bass baritone is that you can keep singing for as long as really your stamina and your health holds out, because the roles really, do get more suited to one's age, I suppose. I mean, the variety of being from being a young baritone and Guglielmo in Così fan tutte to the old cynic in the same opera, or say Don Giovanni, where you've got a number of baritone, mid baritone roles. There, it you tend to get many more opportunities to be cast, I think, within every opera. Um, so I'm grateful for that. It's perhaps the reason I've worked so hard.
Well, given that you have this wide range of different kinds of roles that you can play, and as you mentioned earlier, new operas as well, when you're programming a recital like the one that you have coming up at the Broad Stage in Santa Monica, what do you want audiences to learn about who you are from the pieces you choose to perform?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, the we talk today in the year that one of the greatest singers who ever lived celebrates his 100th anniversary, and that's Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. And he's been my icon. I mean, he was really the baritone who German baritone who lived between 1925, obviously, and died not so long ago. Uh, and really, he's been the icon for, I mean, still for young baritones to look up to. His the wide range that he had um, was due to his intellect and due to his artistic drive. But the one thing that made me sit up as a very young baritone was the fact that he could be a manly, sensitive, and genuine artist And so I really felt that when I was listening to him, that there was no barrier between me and the music and how he felt whatever the role or whatever the song was that he was delivering. And I think from that point of view, I mean, I didn't sing a lot of the repertoire that he sang because I just thought, well, who am I to, to have any further opinion on it than he did. I've got over that now. And that has to do with the fact that my voice is very different to his. And I think in the end, as we grow as artists, that is part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to master our instrument. We're trying to master our sensitivities so that an audience can share them. Um, yeah, I mean, I'd like to feel that I've got a certain strength about my character, that I've got a certain sensitivity to the world, that I'm impacted by yes, any emotional event that is thrown at all of us, and I have my personal reaction to that. And so many composers offer ways to um, to encounter, shall we say, those uh, poetic moments. So yeah, so my program for the Broad stage is absolutely one which shows me it's one of the most personal recitals I've ever done. Um, I'm excited. It's my first recital ever in the Los Angeles area, so I'm really excited to kind of show myself off in a way that I hope people will really appreciate.
Well, I know you've worked with Lise Davidson. You should talk to her about that space because, imagine that voice in this hall. It's like I'm surprised there was still a roof.
My lovely collaborative opportunities with Lisa is have made me realize that she's one of those artists that gives her all, and sometimes if giving her all means unleashing that incredible voice, and yeah, I mean the visceral impact of that is tremendous. I'm not sure I've got the equivalent decibels that she can create, um, but I hope I offer some of the same wonderful artistic sensitivities that she has, and um, yeah, I'm so looking forward to it.
Well, I really wish that I still lived in Los Angeles because I would definitely be there because I love the programming of songs and arias that you have. And each of these pieces, because I was able to look at the set list and went back and listened to recordings of various people doing them all. And they all tell their own story within a 3 to 4 minute
Yeah.
time span. So, what consideration do you give in putting this program together so that you're telling the story you want to tell, but that these individual little stories all build upon each other to help accomplish that and don't serve strictly as just counterpoint to one another?
Yeah, well, I mean, partly the excitement that I have is that because these are all pieces that I've sung before, um, they all can link, shall we say, in a way that uh, tell my journey almost as an artist. I open with a greeting, shall we say, which is just um, an acknowledgement that I'm here in the lovely company of people who've given up their evening to spend with me. And I think in some ways that's almost the most important thing, the fact that people are actually live at a classical music concert, when they can get so much online. And people might say, live is uh, I mean, the risk factor of being disappointed in a live recital is much greater than when you put on on any stream or recording. So for me, live music is partly about it is partly what life is about, simply because of the risk and and the intimacy. And when so the pieces that I've chosen, and particularly in the song part of the recital, is uh, is really a reflection of me, um, yeah, I think developing my artistic life. And I mean, I've taken pretty much the most important songs that have that have the most important songs that have been to me in my life. I love singing each one. When you're singing a whole Schubert recital, for instance, um, you have to find, I mean, there are songs which are more difficult than others. Um, in the programming I'm singing at Broad Stage, I'm very much compiling something which I know the inside and outside and all around the context of where the song has come from, how I've reacted to it in the past. And I think that gives me a certain freedom to really share, yeah, my innermost um, artistic life and my heart, really. I have a section of folk songs, and they all relate to the fact that I'm of Scottish extraction. I think it's interesting that I can sing a Ravel version of a Scottish folk song, a Respighi version of a Scottish folk song, and obviously a Vaughan Williams uh, uh, extract from his songs of travel, which is effectively a folk song style. And and so from that point of view, that group, shall we say, shows, yeah, my heritage, my heart, and my respect really for the accomplishments of others who who know the Scottish tune very well.
Well, you brought up Rafe Vaughan Williams. You're going to be singing Whither Must I Wander um, in the program. And I'm a passionate believer that Vaughan Williams is one of our best composers ever. And I find him woefully underprogrammed. Maybe it's just in the United States. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on Vaughan Williams and his legacy, and if he gets the respect or his music gets the respect that at least I believe it deserves.
Yeah, my encounter with Vaughan Williams came at a very early age as a choral singer. I mean, I began life as a boy chorister, and we sang church, choral music that he had written in the English cathedral setting that I was in Canada. I was part of a men and boys choir, and I always remember thinking how how leisurely I think his he was very don't want to say benign necessarily, but his our ability to approach his music, it's very listenable, but it has a liltingness which has an approachability. I mean, he often works in his harmonies. He's working in very much block chords a lot of the time in terms of um, harmonic structure, and that gives us solidity. Sometimes people feel that's detrimental, shall we say, because you hear everybody moving at the same time. I think it's ingenious because you're taken on this kind of this wave of sound. I mean, one of his most, I just heard his famous violin piece the other day, uh, The Lark Ascending, which is, I know it's one of the all-time favorites of anybody who listened or has encountered it. I mean, it's the violin soars like a lark, and he surrounds that with a very much an pastoral. I mean, he's known as the English pastoral uh, um, composer, and of course, England's um, geography and geology is rolling hills. I mean, there's no kind of great dramatic um, rock outcrops. People in Cornwall and Wales might feel that I'm downplaying their coastline a bit, but in terms of the spreading of the vast rolling hills that there are, the beauty of the undulating greenery that is the English countryside is. I mean, Vaughan Williams was a collector of folk song, so he was part of the fabric of the countryside, where he would uh, very much encounter musically, the essence of the common people. And I think in that way, is he too accessible? Maybe. I don't know. And maybe that's people's thing is they're not challenged, they're not taken in great. Um, I had the great privilege of singing Pilgrim in Pilgrim's Progress, which is this Paul Bunyan story. And honestly, he can write fierce music. Um, and I'm about to debut his, well, for me, a first time singing his Sancta Civitas, which is the big double choir piece with orchestra, a baritone soloist, and a tenor soloist at the end, which deals with the final part of uh, St. John's Revelation, the holy city becoming in. And that's very dramatic, hardly ever done. The forces are enormous. So at the proms, the opening night of the BBC proms this year in London, that's the kind of climax piece, big, big choir piece. And so he can create drama. He can really do that and on a very monumental scale. But you're right, he is underrepresented. My favorite symphony when I was growing up until I was expanded to greater things was the Fifth Symphony, which I sing his C Symphony, uh, which is basically a choral symphony about the sea, of course. Four movements, which are incredible for a soprano and a baritone to take part. So, look, I'm excited just to share that one song, "Whither Must I Wander," um, and yeah, perhaps allow people the chance to explore further.
No doubt. The recital also features music from Der Meistersinger, Otello, and Guillaume Tell. And when you're in a recital, what freedom do you allow yourself to perform these arias in a way that might be different than the way you would perform them if you were in the middle of a production?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, well, there's one blessing is you haven't got a director. Which I'm sorry if I've offended every director in my life, but the thing about a recital is one's own stage manager, one's own director, one's own lighting technician, and one's own choreographer. One doesn't necessarily want to see a singer dancing in a in a in a vocal recital, but the idea that the freedom, it's just you and the piano and an audience, um, is a huge bonus. Singing opera in this context, look, I'm want to enter into the moment that these arias are happening. I will always preface it, shall we say, with a little bit of scene setting, just so the audience can kind of imagine what's going on. Um, I once saw a a fantastic one of my idols again, Sir Tom Allen was, and I think it's one of the only times I've ever heard him sing Iago's Credo from the Otello, and it was a televised one, and you can find it on YouTube. And there he doesn't move his face, he just looks straight ahead, straight into the camera, and it's gripping because everything that you imagine is in his head is in his eyes and in his focus. And that's a really good lesson. The stillness, the focus, um, for describing how evil you are and how you think you've been created by an evil God. Are you following that? That's a very powerful thing. I hope to emulate that sort of concentration and focus for that because it's a terrifying piece of music, um, not just to perform, but I think also to hear. Um, so I'm glad about that. Guillaume Tell, it's a prayer that I sing before the arrow flies, before he shoots his arrow at his only son, Jemmy. Um, and he just says, Jemmy, just stay still. So that's a very calm, reassuring little piece, very short, only about 2.5 minutes. What follows in the opera is absolutely cataclysmic. So we
The
won't do
calm, the
that.
proverbial calm before the storm.
Exactly that. And then the Meister singer it's a philosophy. The Van Are at the beginning of Act Three. He's on his own. He's just reflecting on what happened before. So I can, in the recital sitting situation, I can really feel it's something that's, yes, I mean, just contemplating what is going on and sharing directly with an audience the craziness of living, of what it is like to live in a community where you think you have control and you don't. There's just elements in your life which you have to react to rather than control. And I think that's a very good metaphor for what's going on in our world today. Um, and so yeah, so those are specific ones which I feel are recital appropriate. And then just my favorite aria to finish, which is the Flying Dutchman, and and that's just a whirlwind, and it's a great celebration of yeah, being an artist that can be taken away, that's struggling in our lives, that we find how are we going to find our way? We need an angel to save us. So yeah, I think they're all recital appropriate, even though they're from operas, which have very different scenarios.
Of course, of course. How intimate is the relationship between a singer and his accompanist?
Well, my feeling is that um, the look, I mean, the most important thing is the music, and if there's a way uh, that the voice and the music around the voice can serve the same purpose, um, that the breathing they have between them, literally the phrasing, the way they literally breathe together in making music move forward and back, how if there's a bit of an exchange of um, uh, uh, an idea that comes, either a movement forward or a little flourish uh, or a dynamic, either loud or soft, which can trigger some frisson, shall we say, between the. And I think that the lovely thing I mentioned being live performance is always exciting because somehow I once had an encounter with a pianist who I worked with, and we did a very famous song cycle of Schumann, and we had rehearsed previous to it, and we went and did the performance, and off stage they came up and said, "But Jerry, that's not how we rehearsed it." and and to me, that was almost the best compliment I could get because there was the opportunity to be very creative in the moment, and they followed extremely well. So and I was very grateful for that. And from that point of view, you have to say that it is a marriage, really. That's there's a push and pull, suggestions, acquiescence, and moving forward together. That's the way.
Now you've mentioned the the freedom of no directors, um, being able to perform as you wish. You don't have the costumes and the sets and things like that. But you're coming off of the last, I think it's four performances of Antony and Cleopatra at the Met before doing this recital.
Mm.
Psychologically, emotionally, what does doing a recital within just a few days of having finished a run at the Met give you?
Yeah, no, that's a really excellent question because, in fact, in my career, I've generally tried to isolate my recital work um, for recital periods rather than uh, interspersing it with other activity, particularly opera. I did once try to sing Winterreise in the midst of a run of Don Giovanni's, um, and needless to say, I really didn't sing my best. Um, there's a yeah, the challenge of finding the subtleties of a smaller room, acoustics, obviously, the ebb and flow the minutiae of being sensitive to particular musical phrases. Um, with a piano is a very, it's a subtle game. It's a bit like lawn bowling, um, uh, and football, I'd say, um, because you're still on the grass, of course, but the way you're charging up and down a football field or a soccer field is a lot different than how you roll a ball uh, down a bowling green. Um, and so I think in some ways you can still have spectacular results. I mean, it's the precision and uh, I mean, the glory of the intimacy of a recital hall is about, yeah, the intimacy of it, the personality, the engagement with. So yeah, I won't be singing my arias quite as if I'm over singing over an orchestra. But look, the other thing is that for me, recital singing is about being in the best vocal shape possible. And one of the gifts, shall we say, of John Adams' Antony and Cleopatra is that it was written for me, for my resources, and very much is a helpful preparation for, first of all, and it's in English, Shakespearean English, of course, but in any case, it's very wordy, lots of text, lots of reaction to the meaning, shall we say, of each phrase. Not any more so than Verdi and Boito, shall we, in Othello or Falstaff, but still, those are big sweeps of phrases, and obviously Schumann, Schubert, Grieg, as I'm singing, Ravel, and Duparc, they all require certain delicacy, dexterity. So I'm busy during my non-singing opera on my non-performance days, very much getting back into that context. And we do have split personality sometimes vocally, where I can absolutely feel that I'm, in a recital mode and then offer a performance on the stage of the Metropolitan.
You were scheduled to do Sweeney Todd 10 years ago at San Francisco, and fatherhood got in the way. Um, you know, is that a role that you would still like to do?
That's a lovely reminder. It is, of course, a role I'd love to do. Sondheim, honestly, he he's the gift that keeps on giving, I mean, everything I've I've encountered of his work is always an amazement to me. And yeah, I'd love to do Sweeney again, um, or have the opportunity to do it. I have some amazing colleagues who I've seen do it, and I think, how did they do that? Um, it's often, I mean, the thing about Sweeney is that uh, he's got ambition, he's got heart, he's got a hardness, of course, obviously. A revenge, the revenge streak is so uh, within him, and yet, he's such a fallible human being as well that, yeah, I think there's a really, I mean, he's consumed and blinded by love or what he expects love to be, and yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it.
Well, look, I can't sing, and I love singing Epiphany, so I can't imagine what that opportunity would be like for somebody who could.
Well, it's still tricky, I mean, Sondheim ain't, it's not just la la la. So he still provides a bit of a challenge vocally.
No, you'd have to do La Cage aux Folles to have a song that has la 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 in it. I don't know how I pulled that one out so quickly, but I did.
Yeah, brilliant.
Um, I have two more things for you.
Yeah.
One of my favorite albums of yours was your 2014 Shostakovich album.
Ah, okay.
And
That's
it's
great.
well, because it's not music we're used to hearing. Um,
That's
it's
true.
it's not commonly performed music. It's not part of anybody's repertoire that I'm familiar with. But we're also dealing, you mentioned a previous anniversary. This is also a Shostakovich anniversary this year. And I'm wondering in the preparation of that album and the exploration of those songs, if there was anything that stood out to you about what you learned about Shostakovich as a composer through this work that we don't really know very well.
Yeah, I must say, I mean, I feel in some ways what was devastating, really, because learning those particular songs, the of Michelangelo, and just finding how he, well, the brilliance of Michelangelo, shall we say, you know, just having his ability really to comment using Michelangelo's words on his own artistic ability to create in the political circumstance in which he found himself uh, is a really was very profound. I mean, as you say, I mean, he's not as celebrated as he perhaps could be. Just, I mean, his music is very can be very concrete sounding. Um, However, I'm still I played his music when I was in school band and thought this was fantastic, bombastic, and dramatic and all that thing. When I sang the Michelangelo sonnets, it was just really the power of again his ability to create, comment, and say that an artist really is is compelled to create and the hard work that it takes to become a master is yeah self-reflective on him, on all of us who are yeah trying to do anything artistic. I think it's the boring bits which finally get become the basis of how then we can use the palette which we've become so familiar with, how we can then paint. I mean, that's what I do as a singer. I do boring exercises. My singing teacher will be glad if I said that. And I still do exercises, on ah and breathe, staccato and intonation and runs and all that. When do I use them? Well, they pop up now and then, and thankfully they become very useful. And yeah, my collaboration uh, with the Helsinki Orchestra was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, and the songs by the English poet songs as well, which I mean, he did write them uh, in Russian, but we decided that we would take the English and see if we could align them, and we did a pretty well as close a job as I would hope he would be. I mean, my utmost respect for what he was writing, and I tried to emulate those, the reactions he had to them. I mean, everything in translation is always a challenge, but for me, that was hopefully an honoring of his gift rather than an abuse.
One last thing for you is earlier this year there was a very excellent recording of the Flying Dutchman by Wagner that was released, with you and Lisa Davidson. And I want to conclude by asking you about something that Wagner is quoted as having said. He said, "Everything lives and lasts by the inner necessity of its being, by its own nature's need." What do you think that inner nature is in you as it relates to your career and how you live your life?
You know, through various means, I've been sort of reflecting on what my career is and has been. Um, and it's clear I've had a need to uh, to explore as much music as I possibly can within my voice type and what my artistic personality will allow. Um, yeah, I've found myself wanting to explore all sorts of things intellectually, uh, just curious, emotionally. Sometimes I've been presented with opportunities which I literally gone in not with my eyes closed, but taking a huge leap into the unknown. I mean, the first was the Hans Sachs, I suppose, at Glyndebourne in 2011. Uh, I think it surprised everyone that I was going to do that, because my whole career was, a fairly light lyric, uh, non-German repertoire sort of person based on Mozart. But in any case, taking leaps because your inner self believes that your growth needs uh, these perhaps slightly extraneous activities, stretching, okay, maybe there have been one or two things which I have taken on, which, I'm glad I to have experienced, but now know that that was something that one step. I didn't either invest in it or I couldn't do that. But yes, the need to, and honestly, the need to sing because I remember saying to myself, even when I was a very young singer, perhaps even before my voice changed, I want to do this as long as I still love it. And I still love it. And for me, oh yes, every morning I'm going testing it out, and I'm going, what's the what's the atmosphere? Is it humid today? No. What have I had for breakfast? How much traveling am I doing? Air conditioning, all that kind of management of this. When I'm out there singing, it's just like flying. And I've been fortunate, of course, but seeing the birds fly with such a band, and that's really what I want to be doing as a singer.